I'm now joined by just the man to tell us how to do that, John O'Hare, the CEO of one of our sponsors, Azotel.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Hi, John. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And
good. And you've still got that boat on the west coast of Ireland? You're still out in the boat?
Yeah, still there.
Yeah, get to it. Good weather at the moment, haven't you?
Yeah, not too bad, you know. More time required.
Good. Excellent. All right. Well, look, yes, I've set you up now. You're going to tell us how to simplify running the network. I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Brian. And again, welcome everybody, and delighted to have the opportunity to share some of our insights. So let me just give a little bit of a history on ourselves. So we started out as a wireless ISP here in Cork in Ireland back in 2002. In that picture there on the right-hand side, that's actually the first bit of canopy gear into Europe, I believe. We went through the certification process, so that's why I believe that's the very start of the history of the story. But just a little bit more in terms of Azotel. So Azotel basically started in 2005 after, I suppose, the experience of our first WISP deployment. So we set about, developing the software and systems really to automate a lot of the business processes. In 2005, we rolled the model as a franchise of operators here in Ireland up until 2008. And then in 2008 onwards, we went international, first into Nova Scotia and then into South America. So today we have in excess of 250 operators across 25 countries. And generally our focus, our niche are the smaller operators, 50, up to the tens of thousands of subscribers. So we're very much in tune with the local service providers, which, a lot of the community here today is like, So a little bit more about Simpler and what it can do for you. So essentially, our view of the world is around the end customer, because we believe in delivering, the proper service to that customer. So it's all about the subscriber at the end of the day. What Simpler is it's a single platform used across all the business functions in your operator. So that means that any data, pertaining to those subscribers not entered twice. It avoids the issues of conflicting data across departments. And the other point that I would make is, because we're in so many different markets, we've actually brought the best practices from those markets into the platform. So if you start with us today, you get all of that out of the box, The last point that I would like to stress is, over the years, the last 20 years, we've seen many changes in the access technologies. Those early access points that we started out with had an aggregate capacity of 7 megabits. So you can imagine now we're delivering 1 gig to subscribers. But the key thing is that from managing those in customers, the access technology really, our view is it's agnostic to the platform. So you'll see that as we go through these slides in terms of how we can plug in and out the different equipment as it has evolved over time. In terms of our focused service areas, so EMEA and North America really are our key markets. And the key, I suppose, to driving that is the ability to support those in terms of servicing the software and providing training, providing migration to our operators. So we, as much as important as the software is, we put equal emphasis on support and training our operators around that to help them grow and get the most out of the platform. So let me take a look. I suppose if, in a service provider typical environment, what you will find is typically there will be a CRM system, help desk, network monitoring, accounting, provisioning, work order. So what we find when an operator comes to us with a couple thousand subscribers is that they have disjointed systems putting these processes in place. And the focus really of Simpler is to bring all that under one roof. So we'll now touch on each of these departments. But in addition to that, what I want to highlight is the fact that we have extensive APIs that allow us to plug and pull information into other subsystems as well. So first of all, from the CRM point of view, what your customer services representatives want to see is to have all the information about a customer that's calling in available at their fingertips. So we take the view that we want to put everything onto a single web page, and access to that information then is controlled via the user rights of whoever is logging into the platform. From a billing and payment perspective, we interface with 35 plus different merchant and payment gateways across the countries that we're operating in. And in addition to that, then, the operator has the ability to send out the invoice to detail whatever services that they are providing. So it can be just straightforward broadband, or can also be VoIP. Some TV services can be added in, and basically we have the ability to import as well other services into the platform if the CDRs are available. The key thing really with that is a feature we call SAND. So SAND stands for Subscriber Auto Notify Throttling and Disconnect. So I guess the key thing that what we always advise is that there is the ability to automatically disconnect customers, for non-payment, and equally the ability to reconnect them then, once they have made payment. So the idea is that your customers basically will be notified in advance of their due date. So maybe by next Monday, we would send out an email today or a text message saying, please pay your bill by next Monday. And again, a reminder goes out Sunday, and then Monday morning they're disconnected if no payment is received. They're able to get into the end user portal, make their payment, and get back online, all automatically without touching any admin staff from the operator. Bandwidth management, again, this is part of the provisioning process. So we will interface, through the various tools and networks to control the actual level of service that a customer has signed up for. And what you want to do is to make sure that the product or service that you are selling links directly all the way through the systems to the actual provisioning of that, quantity of bandwidth or quality of service to the end subscriber. In terms of the workflow around installs and provisioning, we integrate with Google Calendar, so that allows each of the installer teams to have their own dedicated calendar, and then a dispatcher can coordinate across a number of different teams. Also, you will see here that we automate the provisioning process for a number of different vendors. So starting out with Canopy, obviously, onto Cambium, 450, EPMP, now onto CNWave. But also we do some of the opposition, where we're forced into doing that. And basically, it just simplifies the whole process of onboarding new customers. The one point that I would like to add here is, Simpler is completely complementary to CN Maestro. We do not really overlap in terms of functionality. If you think about it, the Simpler perspective is all from the customer service representative. That's the key kind of person within the organization that we would be working with. Network monitoring, again, this is not really core to what we do, but as we are installing equipment, we will collect lots of details about that installation. So then we're able to monitor, for speed, for RSSI, for jitter, all of those key kind of high-level parameters that will indicate the strength or otherwise of that connection. And that will be displayed on that customer page that I mentioned earlier. Once you have an issue and you want to drill in deeper, then there's a quick link into that vendor then specific equipment, into CN Maestro, or actually directly onto the SM itself. End user portal, again, part of the package includes the customer portal that is presented to your end customers. And what you want to do as an operator is you want to be pushing as much administration as possible back onto your customer base so that you don't have to do it. And that's really the purpose of the end user portal. So here, your customers, your subscribers can see their history of bills. They can see their usage. So if there's an issue, they can go here and see whether or not it's something that's going on in their network, have the ability to raise tickets here if necessary, and so on and so forth. So all of the, the functions that you would expect to see in a customer portal are there out of the box. Maps and coverage checking, again, this is done at a kind of a macro, at a high level, and it gives a good sense of, if there's a query coming into you, whether or not there is coverage in that area. Also, the ability to track location for every, customer that's seeking a connection, or if you go out and you find that you don't have line of sight, for example, those are all color represented by the dots here on the screen or whatever. So, this is a very powerful tool and information to build up over time, because it allows you to go in and backfill those areas where there's poor coverage, as technology evolves. Again, what I would say here is that this is done at a high level, and then you would use tools like Link Planner to dig into the more specifics. So again, complementary. Inventory management. So our systems will store all aspects of the equipment as it's being installed. So IP address, MAC address, all the other attributes that you would have around the key components and assets in the network are stored within Simpler. And then we have the ability to track that equipment as it goes from, as it arrives into the warehouse, as it goes warehouse to van, and as its history then across different customers if it's relocated. Also the ability to track stock, in the case of the failures or whatever, we can track that on the system itself. The database runs on PostgreSQL. We have full read access to the database, and as I mentioned earlier, with APIs and other tools, whatever, operators have the ability to, utilize this data in additional ways beyond the platform if that's so required. Hotspots, again, part of, I guess, what we do is help operators with their requirements, and we would have worked on a number of hotspot solutions as well, even though that's not core functionality to what we do. This slide here is just a quick summary, so if anybody wants any more information afterwards, be sure to reach out. We're available on the actual platform here today, or if you ever need access, come back to us for that. So I suppose the key point that I would like to make here is, any of those functions that we've seen, they're all rudimentary, they're all basic, but it's the combination of them really that becomes the killer app in terms of the platform itself. So rather than, again, our focus is the more rural, the smaller operators up to 50,000 odd subscribers or those networks. And we really do allow those operators to have best-in-class technology to manage their subscriber base. Other tools in there are mobile app. So this will allow you, obviously, for scheduling, also the ability to do complete electronic, paperless communication with the customer in terms of contract signing, etc. Key points here are, I suppose, we learned a lot from Jan earlier about the availability of government funding for broadband rollout, and that's been going on, I guess, in our experience since we arrived into Canada in 2008, So the platform itself lends itself very well to operators to attract that funding, and it's highly utilized in that regard, because again, once you have a system like this in place, it demonstrates you have the ability and the foundations in your organization to actually make maximum use of that investment. Other side of this is networks that are on the platform. Doing a due diligence on those networks is very easy to do. You have every bit of information that you would need in terms of, if you were to purchase one of these networks. So again, very, very powerful in that regard. I did mention as well that we do a lot of importing of other operator information into the platform for our operators in terms of acquisitions. Typical network deployment options. So this is very early, kind of where we started out with a WISP in a box, backhaul, access point, and SM. Very simple network, good for up to a couple thousand subscriber deployments. But most that we would come across today would be, typically radius controlled. Radius allows us to demarc the network from Simpler itself, and we have the ability to either communicate with a NAS device in the network or the NAS functionality within the APs themselves. Also done extensive integration on LTE variants, so a number of those networks have been incorporated into the platform. And we learned a little about fiber earlier, but again, we've seen that as well by a number of our operators, and we've done full integration with a number of different fiber vendors. So very much the hybrid model that we spoke about of rolling out fiber, but then the ability to layer wireless on top of those networks to deliver quick connectivity out to the customer base. So where does all that leave one? Basically, what Simpler is then is a single pane of glass really across all of the different access technologies. So be the web that we spoke about here, radius, LTE, fiber, satellite, DSL, all of those technologies are really hidden behind the Simpler platform itself. And that is giving the CSR and the main administration staff in the organization a single view across the different networks and vendors. This is just a workflow in terms of new operator setup. And then what I would like to just finish really on in terms of our own vision statement. So as I say, we're across 250 operators, 25 countries. That gives us incredible insight into the success, what makes our operators successful. And we would just like to share that with our operator base. Another example, I suppose, in the US at the moment is, again, the rollout across the electrical utility networks. And a number of those cooperatives are also engaged with us in the rollout of those services. Again, both fiber and wireless involved in those deployments. So with that, Brian, I think that concludes this slide presentation. Thank you. And if there are any questions, be delighted to take them.
John, having learnt more about what you do and the number of service providers that you've worked with over the years, I've got a simple one. What's the best single piece of advice that you would give a service provider today?
Yeah, very good question, Brian. I guess we do have some insight into that. I mean, what I would say, number one, is it's all about service. So as we've seen, speeds, they rapidly or they increase dramatically over the years. But ultimately, one wants to deliver a service to your end customer. That's all the customers are interested in. So how do you go about delivering a good service? You choose the right vendors for that, And obviously, we've been working with Canopy, I guess, since 2002. And over the years, we've seen, the teams there, and Cambium is a continuation of that whole philosophy of, leaving no radio technology behind as much as possible. So there's been an evolution across all of the different products that have come out from Cambium Networks that allows our operators to really deliver, a premium service to the end customer. From, I guess, the other key aspect, just from having a platform like Simpler, but even if you do not have something like that, is the ability to link the actual subscription that you would assign to a customer to the actual service, again, that they're getting. So that there's a one-to-one mapping. Nobody can escape that net in terms of payment, and customers get what they pay for because it works both ways. I mean, most of the networks that come to us will have a disjoint between billing and provisioning. And in that case, you don't have happy customers because they're not getting what they paid for in many cases. So,
and what countries does Simpler actually cover?
Yeah, I mean, very much across all the states in the US, that would be a major market for us. Recently into the Caribbean, we're in a number of the islands there. Across the African continent, large networks in Spain, obviously UK based or whatever. So those are the primary markets to date for us, and we tend to be kind of focused in, it may seem like a lot, but we're actually focused on those markets as opposed to going beyond them.
Okay, well, look, John, thank you once again. And by the way, can I again thank you for sponsoring the day today, because without companies like yourself, we couldn't have these events. So Thank you very much again for the presentation.
Most welcome, Brian, and thanks everybody, and best of luck now. Bye for now. Cheers.